So today I'm going to warp up a cactus flower table loom, and it is essentially like the mini and the maxis, with the exception it has springs at the top and at the bottom. So I have already adjusted for size. I'm going to make a 15-inch pillow, and normally I would warp up in a horizontal position, but just for demonstration purposes I'm going to warp up vertically. So I'm using a 4-ply wool warp. Let's see, I've got a knot in it here. I need to get. Okay, I've got my knot out. So I've already decided how big to make it. It's going to be 15 inches. So with my wool warp, I'm going to go tie a square knot around that first warp. And I'm going to tie one that I can get undone later. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to go up to the corresponding slot at the top, and I'm going to warp this in the alternate pattern. So instead of going around one pin, I'm going to go around two. And then when I go back to the bottom, I'm going to go in the slot right adjacent to the previous warp. And then I'm going to go around 2 pins instead of 1. And then I'm going to the top, going into the slot next to the previous warp. And then around 2 pins instead of 1. Then down to the slot next to the previous warp and around 2 pins. Up to the slot next to the previous warp and around 2 pins. And I'm going to continue in this manner all the way across. This alternate pattern is good for bulky yarns and things you want heavy, like pillow or maybe a heavy bag. So this gives you a slot, 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 skip a slot, 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 skip a slot, 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 skip a slot. So it's really good for heavy, bulky yarns, and I'm going to use a bulky weight yarn for this pillow. So I'm going to continue all the way across to the other side, and I'll catch you then. So now I have finished warping up all the way as far as I want, 15 inches. So I ended at the bottom instead of at the top because I need an even number of warps. If you want an odd number of warps on your weaving, you begin at the bottom and end at the top. However, the design I'm going to do is kind of like a variation of this. It'd be like that, actually. So I'm going to have a design that I need an even number of warps for. So I'm just going to do a variation of this design on the pillow. So my next step is to put the entwining on. So I'm going to just change my camera angle here so I can just show you how that's done. So now that I have my warp all on, I'm going to do the end twining. And just to mix things up a little bit, I'm going to use 3 cords for the end twining instead of 2. Now, because I have the alternate warping method on this loom, the 3 cords will cover the ends a little bit better than just the 2. So I've tied an overhand knot at the beginning. I'm going to take 1 cord and I'm going to go under the first. Now I'm counting the knot as a warp pair. So I'm going to go under that first of the pair and then back through the same slot as that warp and pull it up next to the knot. Then I'm going to drop that one, take the next one, go under the first of the next warp pair and pull it through the same slot as the warp. I'm going to drop that one and take the next one, go under the first of the warp pair, pull it back through the same slot. Now, when you do 3 cords, you have to remember what order you're doing them in. So you can see right here, here was the first one, second, and third. So I'm going to take the first one again, go under the next warp pair, back through the slot, always taking the one the farthest from where you're working. So it's just the same as doing 2 entwining cords, but you're just adding an extra cord. Now if you're doing side edge cords, if you do 3 on the entwining, do 3 on the side edge cords. So I'm going to continue just in this manner, always making sure that I'm pulling it back through the same slot as that warp. And all your edge twining should be lying on the outside of your peg bars. If you have any on the inside, that means you're not pulling it back through the same slot as the warp. So I'm going to continue in this manner all the way across, and then when I get to the end, I'm going to tie another overhand knot. So I'm just going to continue in this manner, and I'll catch you when I got this all finished. Now that I have my entwining all the way across and another overhand knot at the end, there's one more thing I need to do, and that's retie these knots. Now, I always like to retie them on the outside of my peg bars. I know some people leave them and just weave over the 2 strands, but I like to retie them. So I untie that, and I pull my outside warp nice and tight, and then I just tie another square knot, making sure that I pull it to the outside of those peg bars. So I'll do that with the opposite end, and then I'm ready to begin. Okay, we have our loom warped up. We have our end twining on both ends. Remember, I demonstrated it on one end, but you have to put it on both ends. We have our end knots retied, and then we have our shed stick inserted. And there's one more thing we need to do before we're ready to weave, and that's take the top pins out of the loom above the top bar, and on the table loom you need to take them out below the bottom bar. So you just pull out the top pins, this one, and then the springs put the tension on your warp. So now you should have a real tight warp and you're ready to weave. Now you can put string heddles on, and I'm going to demonstrate that in a separate video. So join me for installing string heddles. So thank you for watching.